Jeff's going to answer questions for you tonight, and John's going to be presenting questions to him. All the candidates would be given that same opportunity, and you're going to get to see what he's about. Some of you probably have, some of you probably haven't. As you're aware, in Beaverdam, it's been 30, 35 years since we've had a new board of supervisors. You know, and it's time. It is time. And as voters, you've got to make a tough decision, and and you should be well informed with that decision. And I cannot express my appreciation for Jeff coming out and being a part of this. And I wish the other candidates had come, because they should have. So you could have seen. But come election day, it comes 3 weeks from today, you make your decision. It's a very important decision that you're going to make. And make it on good information, and make it for people that you're going to be able to count on. In respect to that, to give a little bit of the lay of what we're going to do here, is Jeff's going to have 10 minutes, basically give you his stump speech. And once he's given that, John's got some questions to ask him. You all, it's going to be open totally to you all to ask the questions. Just keep the questions good. Just keep them civil. And it's recognized decorum. This man is out here. He is a candidate. He's going to give you his vision. If you don't like his vision, you can, on 3 weeks from now, you vote for another vision. But don't beat up on this gentleman. He has come. He has come to give you his vision and how he would like. He understands that his constituents, all of you sitting out there in that audience, how he feels that he can best lead you. And if you like what you hear, vote for him. And when you leave this room tonight, if you like what you hear, spread the word, so that you have the right man setting the word up on that board, that podium, come November. It's a very important election. It involves a lot happening in Hanover County, and where Hanover County goes down the road. There's one person I forgot to say thanks to, and that's Bob Keeler. He has helped. He's joined in with me over the last few weeks and pulled this thing together. And appreciate it, Bob, and for your input and your help through the process. With that,
Well, I'll say a couple words and then we'll get Jeff up here, okay?
sounds good, man.
Listen, I appreciate it. I'm glad to be with you. How many of you are up with me early in the morning at 6 a.m.? All right, that's great. What's wrong with the rest of you? I do the morning news at WRVA from 6 o'clock in the morning until 10. I'm so excited to be in the radio because, it's radio, so I don't have to wear a suit and tie anymore. Some of you may remember me from 10 years at Channel 8 as the early morning anchor at Channel 8. It's so much easier not to have to worry about looking presentable. All I gotta do is do my vocal warm-ups and it's okay. And this has been a great return to the Richmond area for me. I grew up here. I grew up in Henrico County. Some of you may know that I used to be the guy in the back because I was the communications director for George Allen when he was in the U.S. Senate. I was an intern in the press office for President Reagan out in Los Angeles. My dad was in the House of Delegates for 18 years. I was the free staffer who worked my butt off for him all those years, every campaign. So I've been through a lot of campaigns, both as a paid staffer and as a family member. I know how tough it is to throw yourself into a political race, and I'm excited to be here today. Now let me tell you, my father is in the hospital back in Richmond, went to the ICU yesterday. So I went over to see him and he said, "Where are you going? Why are you leaving?" He's barely coherent right now. I said, I made a commitment to do this event in Ashland, but as soon as the event's over, I'm coming right back to the hospital. So I'm going to tell you, we're ending before 8 o'clock, okay? Because I made a commitment to get back to him and hopefully, miraculously miraculously he will get a little stronger. But I am so excited to be here in Ashland. Jeff Katz, my colleague in the afternoon, is he the king of Beaverdam or the honorary mayor of Beaverdam? He tells me he's the king of Beaverdam. I remember putting some money out for his campaign when he was trying to be the honorary mayor of Beaverdam. He sends his regards to everybody since he's one of your neighbors right down the street here. Jeff, it's remarkable when two radio people actually get along. Normally they're gunning for each other in the parking lot trying to mow each other down, but we actually get along really well. And I'm so excited to be in his territory. It'll be bragging rights for me to be in Hanover and talking about Beaverdam. So with no further ado, let me introduce our candidate who did show up tonight. I didn't have anything to do with who showed or who didn't show. I love having multiple people to talk to, but if one person shows up, this is like being back on the radio. I'm happy to spend some time with one-on-one. The one thing, when I'm on the radio, I can mute you, I can cut you off. Nobody knows whether I'm a jerk or not. It's going to be revealed tonight. So really, if you got questions, it's totally fine. I'm sure you're a big man. You'll be able to handle whatever comes our way. But for the Virginia gentleman thing, I'm still kind of big on that. Lord knows there are plenty of people that I get into conflicts with on a regular basis, and I'm still trying to elevate the conversation, so I'm sure we'll be able to do that tonight. So I'm going to grab a chair, and then let me give you the podium for 10 minutes, and I'll give you the high sign. If you hit 15, I'm cutting off. Okay? Jeff, welcome to the podium. We're glad you're here.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Well, good evening. It is so wonderful to see so many people here this evening that have come to show their support and an interest in the upcoming election. And I want to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come here tonight. I hope that I don't disappoint you. And I want to start off by thanking Mr. Jack Dyer in the Hanover County Republican Committee and Mr. Bob Keeler for all their hard work to make this possible. I also want to give a shout out to Mr. Clark Mercer for providing this wonderful venue, allowing us the opportunity to be here tonight, and I thank him for that. And also, what a privilege it is to finally meet the one and only John Reid. He is the true and trusted voice of conservatism on the radio today. He is offering sanity in the world that we live in. So thank you so much for all that you do. So before I begin, I have a question for you. The question is, how many legs does a dog have if I say to you the dog's tail is a leg?
4.
Well, it's 4. Just because I say the dog's tail is a leg doesn't make it a leg. Can anybody tell me what famous person made that statement? Can we say President Abraham Lincoln? It's interesting that even in his day, folks had trouble having a grasp on the obvious. So, and here we are today with the same problem. So, anyway, to begin with, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself before I move into why I'm running for the Beaverdam District Board of Supervisor seat. My name is Jeff Stoneman, of course. I'm running for the Beaverdam District Board of Supervisor seat, and I've been married to my wife Gail, who is right here, for 28 wonderful years. We have two sons, Weston and Wyatt, ages 22 and 20. I'm a born-again Christian. I'm an ordained deacon, and I currently go to church at Beaverdam Baptist, where I'm serving as the treasurer. I'm also an entrepreneur and a small business owner. And Beaverdam has been my home for the past 27 years. And 27 years seems like a pretty long time, but one of my opponents is making a big deal out of being born and raised here. Well, I'm sorry, but I didn't have anything to do with that. I didn't have a choice in the matter, but I grew up as quick as I could, and I got here just as fast as I could. I thank God that I did that. So anyway, prior to us opening our own business, I worked as a lineman for Dominion Resources, or it's Dominion Energy, for 15 years, and then I worked for Verizon as a lineman as well for 5 years. I really enjoyed that career. I enjoyed working with my hands. I enjoyed being outside. And when people would ask me, you know, what do you do for a living? You know, I'd proudly say, I dig holes and climb poles, and I'm proud of it. So, fast forward to 2000, my wife Gail and I, we opened Posse into Pet Resort in the Montpelier area, which is a boarding, grooming, daycare, and training facility. This was a huge aspiration and a dream of ours, and it came true in 2000, which opened the way for me to pursue a lifelong passion as a dog trainer. I was able to train retrievers for competition and travel up and down the East Coast with my family, and it's something that I enjoy very much. I might have to get some cards I'd like to say here. Here we go. So, you know, my wife Gail and I, we've always been community oriented. We've always enjoyed serving in our community. So when Gail and I were first married, we had the opportunity to partner with her dad. She's from Kilmarnock, and you know, that's down in the eastern area. And her dad has always had a dream of opening a museum to showcase the heritage of the folks living in Kilmarnock and for the lifestyles of the watermen down there. So we were able to partner with him and to organize an event called the Dance Extravaganza. And so for those of you that don't know me or know my wife, we were kind of semi-professional dancers back in the day. We danced country western and swing and hustle and stuff like that. And so we got to travel around the country doing that and enjoyed it very much. But we're able to use that gift that God had given us to benefit others. So we organized an event called the Dance Extravaganza, and it was an annual event. We raised money for that museum down there, and I'm glad to say that he was able to open the museum. We've been doing this for 25 years, and the museum is still going strong today, thanks to the efforts of her dad and the folks down there in Kilmarnock. Fast forward to moving to Beaverdam. We had not lived here long when we found an opportunity to do something that we were good at, something we love, and we love kids. We love seeing kids do things that showcase their talents. So we found an opportunity at the Montpelier Center to organize an event we called Hanover Star Search. And for that, we invited children, kids from the age 12 to 18 to showcase their talents in music, song, and dance. And the winners of these events were able to obtain a cash prize, and we'd also organize for them events and festivals to further showcase their talents and make their parents very proud. And so we enjoyed that very much. We also, through our church, we've got a wonderful ministry there called Mission to Beaverdam, where we're able to serve in our community, to go and help folks build their decks, rebuild decks, put new roofs on their house, even just yard cleanup and winterizing their houses. So you know, we have a history of serving in our community. We love serving our neighbors, and we love being a part of the Beaverdam district. So that's a little bit about myself. So why am I running for the Beaverdam District Board Supervisor seat? Well, when I first got into this, I had a vision for things that I thought were important. But being on the campaign trail, knocking on doors and talking to folks just like yourselves, I was able to get a list of things that are important to you. And that's what matters most, is what is important to you and what you think Hanover should look like. And so as I'm out there knocking on doors, making phone calls, you know, number one on the list is growth. And growth, or the rapid growth of our community, seems to be number one on a lot of people's minds. And you know, growth is not always a bad thing. We love welcoming new families into our community, but it's the overgrowth. You know, watching our beautiful farms being turned into subdivisions one after another, it kind of breaks my heart, because I'm an avid outdoorsman. I love to hunt, I love to fish, I love to kayak, I love being in the great outdoors. And my hope is that I can pass that on to my children and to my grandchildren. I love the rural way of life. I love our quiet country living. And these are things that, you know, we want to maintain. We want to make sure that whoever's elected in office is not someone that's going to give a rubber stamp to real estate and developers. We want to make sure that we have a clear vision for Hanover, and it's not about the rapid growth and overdevelopment. And you can look right out here on 54 as it's heading west toward Beaverdam, and you see that growth coming and it's heading our way. And we want to make sure that we do something about that. So growth needs to be managed properly. It's not a bad thing, but if it's done in the right way, so that any new developments that come into our area don't destroy or take away from our rural way of life. We want others to enjoy it, but we want to do it in the right way. So I'm not in support of rapid growth, high-density housing. I want to make sure that we maintain the character that we all love. And we most of us that are not from here, that moved out here, we moved out here for that reason. And we want to make sure it stays that way as well. So the second on the list is I'm traveling around and I meet new people, and I might meet a new couple, young couple, and they're new to the area, and I ask them how long they've been living here, to say, a couple of years or whatever. And so why did you move to Hanover? And invariably they would say, it's for our schools. Hanover has some of the best schools in the state. And there's no doubt about it, our teachers work hard to make sure that your kids are well cared for and taught well. But I would have to say, after last week, what we experienced in Texas, it just breaks my heart to think that something like that could happen. And that I think probably now the safety and security of our children is probably number one on our list. We want to make sure that no one can walk into a school and do what that young man did to those children. We need to provide the best security possible. I had a conversation with Sheriff Hines a while back, and I was just asking him what his needs were and what he thought the concerns he had for Hanover. And number one on his list was the financial support to be able to recruit and to hire and to keep the best talent available. And Hanover has a problem because we're not able to pay our deputies a salary that keeps them here. They're able to make more money in Henrico and in Chesterfield. So after training, a lot of them, they need to pay the bills, they need to take care of their family, and so they end up moving to another county or going to work somewhere else. And we need to change that. We need to provide our public safety officials the resources necessary to hire and to keep the best talent. And I think that we need a resource officer in every school in Hanover. We need to not allow that to happen here. Like I say, my heart goes out to those folks there, the community, and for the ones that have lost loved ones. And I pray that God would give them the comfort and the strength that they need in the upcoming days, weeks, months, and years, because they've suffered a great loss. And I would like to be, if I'm elected to represent Hanover County and the Beaverdam District, I would like to make sure that we don't have anything like that happen here. We need to provide our Sheriff's Department with all the resources that they need. And so I'd say third on the list for most folks is going to be fiscal responsibility, your taxes, your hard-earned money. Hanover is one of the best or the most fiscal responsible counties in our region. Hanover has a AAA bond rating, which is pretty impressive in itself. It's a testimony to the current elected officials and your county manager. They do try to use your money wisely. But there's always opportunity for improvement. We want to make sure that we do the best we can with your resources. If I'm elected, I will make sure that I review and scrutinize all spending projects to make sure that your money is spent wisely and that more of your hard-earned money stays with you. So, in conclusion, why should you vote for me? Why am I the most qualified candidate running for the Republican nomination for the Hanover County Board of Supervisors seat? And I'm going to have to read this because I don't want to miss it. I think I've got it memorized, but it's important. Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on to them to do the same. Or one day, we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was like to live in the United States where men were free. Our country is in a a pivotal point right now. We need to elect strong leaders, conservative leaders, God-fearing men that understand the battle that we're up against. You know, it's not just about A1 zoning and potholes. Even though roads are very important, and we want to maintain safe roads to travel on. But this country is in a battle for our freedom. And I think it's important that you elect a leader, even at the Board of Supervisors level, that has a vision that's bigger, one that encompasses the challenges that we have in our country. You know, we don't, in our education system, I would say before last week, I was extremely concerned about the parents' rights to choose what's best for their children. I'm extremely concerned about that now. I'm extremely concerned about what's being taught in our schools. And even though in Hanover, you could say that CRT is not being taught, but it's on the verge, and there are some versions of it. There's also a program out there called Social and Emotional Learning. You know, these are things that parents should teach. It's about, you know, what's right and what's wrong. It's about the values that you hold dear. These are things that a parent needs to teach. You know, it's not up to the government to raise your children. It's up to you. Your children are your responsibility, and you don't want to pass that on to someone else to do. Our teachers work hard, they do a great job, but their job is to teach the basics. Yours is to teach your children the values that you hold dear and what's right and wrong, and how to love all people and treat all people with respect. You don't need someone else to do that for you. You need to do that for yourself. And so if I'm elected, I promise to always fight for your freedom and to protect that in the hopes that we can pass that along to our children, and our children will pass it along to their children. It's very important, and that's why Jack says that this is a very important election. Every election from here on is extremely important. We need to elect strong leaders, leaders that have a vision that's bigger, that encompasses all the battles and challenges that we face today. And so I would appreciate your support. I would appreciate your vote on June 21st, right over here at the Ashland Library. I look forward to seeing all of you there. And so I'm going to open it up for questions now.
Come on and grab a seat. And you want to just hold these mics? That might be better. All right. No.
If I played the guitar, I'd be ready to do this. I thought that was that great set of topics to start with. And can we begin with the school situation?
Sure.
My understanding is that this is pretty unique in Hanover, that the board members appoint the school board members, right? And so let's say you're on the board and you appoint somebody, and you do the interview process, I guess.
Correct.
You have a couple of people that you're looking at, and you make the appointment, and the person that you appoint to the school board doesn't exactly carry out your wishes.
Correct.
How do you balance your oversight role, if any, with their management responsibility as a school board member?
Well, that's a good question. Hopefully, I like to think that I would have a set of questions that would reveal their innermost feelings about things. I'd like to pick somebody that has the value system that I hold near and dear. But also, too, they do work for you, so to speak. I mean, you do appoint them. And so as long as you're in office, their job depends on, you know, how well they kind of follow through with your wishes, or how you would like to see the county develop. Obviously, they do have a certain amount of autonomy, and I don't know that you can you know, strictly oversee that. But you need to make sure that the person you pick is most qualified, and also to hold your values to a high standard.
What do you think is going on in this county? Because as somebody from Henrico looking at Hanover, when you guys make it in the Times Dispatch, man, it's a big deal. And the trans policy, you know, again, I don't ever want to be rude and mean or hurt anybody's feelings. I assume most of the people in this room wouldn't want to hurt somebody's feelings. but there's a real cultural tug of war that seems to be, ground zero right here. How are you gonna navigate that? I'm a little surprised that this is happening in Hanover. Are you?
Not really. I think, because we say that, Hanover's got some of the best schools in the state. There was an issue for some trans policies, and the school board chose not to implement all of them. So I think that drew the ire of political activists. In the way I see it, when it comes to the trans issue, I want all kids to be safe. I want all kids to feel like they can experiment in life and just be themselves. I can't weigh in on that so much, but I feel like there's more at play here with this than just kids. I think the political activism is perpetuating this phenomenon. I guess for me, it's kind of a phenomenon. I shouldn't say that, but it feels like that they want to create a victim class in order to create conflict and to cause trouble. I think if you leave kids alone and let them just be themselves and figure life out without encouraging them to go in any direction, I think things will work out, and in the end, they're going to be who they want to be without our help. So, I think navigating through that, if I understand the question right, is that I want all of our children to be safe. I want to provide a healthy environment for all of them, and I do want to respect parents' rights. I know that some of the policies in the transgender community, where they want kids to be able to engage in reassignment without their parents. I mean, I read articles about that. I don't know if that's going to be the case here in Hanover, and I don't think so. But nevertheless, we need to be aware of that and to make sure that parents are involved and they do have a say in what's going on with their kids' lives.
Yeah. Are you prepared to get into a fight over that, a litigious fight over that? And maybe not the sex reassignment, because I don't know if that's going to go as a state issue or not.
Right.
But the what the bathroom sign says, or which locker rooms are open. My sister played volleyball at Godwin High School and in Rico, and I've talked to her about it, and she's like, yeah, I just wouldn't. That is not what I don't want a biological male competing against me on the teams that I was on, and I wouldn't feel comfortable in the locker room environment as a female athlete with biological men in the room. And I have to defer to my sister's feelings on that.
Well, that's why I told the story that I did at the beginning. Just because you say something is something, what it is, it doesn't mean that it really is.
Yeah.
And that was the point of that is because of the issues that we face today. I am not in favor of, for trans kids, I think they need a separate bathroom. We do not want to allow a 17-year-old boy in the locker room with a 16-year-old girl. I will say that I am totally against that. It is
my dad coached football in Lee Davis, and I've read a couple of articles about revisiting school names and that perhaps the community was not consulted when certain changes were made. If that reemerges as an issue here, or building future school buildings, trying to decide what the appropriate names would be, I assume you're not going to go to New York City PS 26 or something generic like that. How do you navigate that kind of cultural touchstone that can blow up in your face?
I have a hard time with that because the name of schools and honoring, historic figures in history, I don't see anything wrong with that. I mean, it doesn't, I really don't, there's not that much in the name, and I don't think it was ever a problem until people brought it up. I just remember in school, I don't remember anybody complaining about Lee Davis High School or, anything like that, the Redskins, and renaming everything in this council culture, at some point in time, we just have to say no to that. We just got to get back to reality and say, names like that, I don't think they're disrespectful. I mean, in some ways, it honors people, to say that, and name something after somebody. It's important to do that and to honor somebody's effort in life. and their accomplishments. So I'm not in favor of renaming things because of the cultural fad at the moment. I think that we need to go back to a society that exercises good sense.
You brought up the debate over overdevelopment, and man, I see it every day. What used to be rural pastures out on what was West Broad in Enrico now is one of the busiest roads in America. Right. And these apartment complexes and condo complexes, some of them cost almost $1 million, which is kind of shocking to me. How do you balance somebody who has owned a farm for 70 years, 100 years in the family, the father, the grandfather dies, the remaining son or daughter says, you know what, somebody's about to cut me a big check here, and I want that big check, and I'm not gonna farm. I don't think, I love the way it looks, but I'm not really willing to sacrifice this money so that my neighbors can have a pastoral view. How do you balance that?
Well, everyone has a right to develop the property to the best value, but we do have ordinances that dictate, what kind of density. So it's okay, like I say, development is okay, and we want to encourage new families to come out here. But what we don't want to see is the higher density subdivisions that move into our area, and we do have ordinances that will help mitigate that for us. We have different zoning requirements. So as long as we stick to those and don't allow special exemptions to put things in just to make a quick buck. We want to maintain our rural character. We want to maintain our historic sites like Scotchtown, and so the things like that, you just have to protect it. And just we have laws and rules and ordinances that help us do that. So we just need to be transparent and not show favoritism in any way, and just make sure that we're consistent. So when we're passing zoning opportunities like that they fall in line with the folks that live here in the Beaverdam district hope to see Beaverdam look like.
I'm glad to talk to people who aren't professional politicians. When I was in DC, everybody would come and talk to me about how they'd been on the Board of Supervisors and they were in the House of Delegates and the State Senate. Sometimes they had never worked a real job. Not to be rude, but not a real job. And the only thing they'd ever done is run for office. So that's refreshing to talk to somebody who that hadn't been their career trajectory. But can you tell me about your time here where you've looked at the board and you thought, if I were on the board, I would do something different, or maybe there was a great decision that was made that you would validate, your observation of the board and its actions over the years that observing has prepared you to step in and take one of these roles?
Well, I have observed the board operate on a number of occasions because, like I say, I am an entrepreneur and a small business owner, and I was able to develop a piece of property right there in the Montpelier area. And most recently, the purchase of the Shalom House Retreat, we had to go through some rezoning there as well. And so, for my wife and I, there was a couple big turning points why I decided to get into. My wife actually, she is the political major, So,
Okay.
so it's surprising.
You want to join us?
I'm the one that's running, and she laughs about that because she said you never wanted to do anything with it. But what we saw going on in our schools, the rewriting of history and stuff like that. And then we knew that the Board of Supervisors appointed the school board was a driving force for us because we saw the trajectory of our country and what's going on with our young people today. And so, I felt like that was an opportunity to do something about it. But getting back to the development of a piece of property, I saw where it's very difficult for the average citizen like myself to get a project through. There's so many moving parts to rezoning and getting a site plan approved, and it's very difficult, to grasp how much money it takes to get that done. Every time you have to have a set of drawings redone and resubmitted, it costs you thousands of dollars. And we feel like that a big part of being in Beaverdam and a part of the rural community is the mom and pop type businesses, you know, just regular folks. I mean, who serves the community better than people that live here? And it's extremely hard to get a project through. I mean, you never know where the goalpost is and what you need to do next in order to get that project passed. So, you know, my wife and I talked about it a lot. And said, you know, if you ever ran for Board of Supervisors, you know, you could be an advocate for those citizens that want to open that small business and serve their community and work in their community and add value to the place where we live. And so that's a big part of it, is being an advocate, being able to step in for the average citizen and help make a difference in their life and help them fulfill their dreams. The Board of Supervisors, I think, for the most part, I think do a good job. I've always respected the decisions that they make a lot of times. But oftentimes I've seen, well, at least once I've seen a project that was turned down that had, you know, 100% community support, and you know, it was a good project, and for no reason at all, it seemed like it didn't pass. And so that's what I'd like to see, is transparency on the Board of Supervisors when we're judging these cases. So, you know, for the most part, I think being an advocate for the citizens, helping the average person be able to navigate through that, and then when you have a problem with the county administration, you have someone that you can call, somebody that's ready to go in and fight for you.
I'm watching the clock. I want to save at least 15 minutes for folks here to ask questions. So get ready to come up and ask a question if you want to. But in preparing for our conversation, a couple of people said, ask him about conflicts of interest. Conflicts of interest. So you mentioned transparency a couple of times. And you know, if you were running for the House of Delegates of the State Senate and you mentioned you worked for Dominion Energy, oh my God, the world would end because, you know, they're the evil specter killing Virginia, supposedly. I don't personally think that. And if you weren't an executive, maybe they'd give you a break. But how do you, or would you manage potential conflicts of interest? Can you foresee any of them and think through that?
Well, you know, I have actually spoken on this once before. You know, I own a boarding and grooming daycare and training facility in Montpelier. And obviously, from time to time, you'll see a case come up where somebody else wants to fulfill that same dream in their life and open a facility. For me, I feel like that would be something that I would have to step aside and recuse myself so that, you know, no matter how the decision comes out, if it was for the negative, you know, someone could come back and say, hey, you know, you turned that down because you didn't want competition. And so the same thing I think applies to, you know, my opponents. You want to make sure that they don't have any conflicts of interest, you know, any strong ties to real estate development or construction. You know, and the opportunity there is to enrich yourself a little bit, and I think that, you know, that can happen in politics. I'm sure you know that. So, you know, that's why we want to have transparency. We want to make sure we elect officials that don't have deep ties into those areas, because that's a big part of the job is to vote on cases involving real estate development.
All right, this I don't like this question, but I was interviewing Glenn Youngkin when he was a candidate for governor several times, and people kept saying, ask Glenn Youngkin if he's going to run for president. And I was about to do it one morning, and I thought, you know, why would I pin my guy down about that issue when Terry McAuliffe won't even come on the radio with me and answer one question? So I think it's a legit question to have asked Glenn Youngkin, and here we are. I'm kind of wondering whether he's thinking about running for president. I wish I asked him. Maybe one day I'll work up the nerve to do it when he comes on with me again. But may I ask you, as you look forward, let's say you get on the board, do you have a mindset of, I want to serve one term? What's 4 years, right?
Yes.
Yeah, 1 term, 2 terms. How would you look at that? Because the original member of the board was there how many decades?
38 years.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Well, unfortunately for this particular election, it's a special election to fulfill the last year of Mr. Stanley's term. So as soon as whoever gets in, and I'm hoping it will be me, you know, you'll have to turn right around and run again. So I can foresee at least 5 years, God willing, but you know, I don't see anything past that. You know, I do believe in term limits. I don't have the aspirations for a higher office. Obviously,
You will not be running for president in 2024.
No, I am barely making it through this little election. And it is a strain, but you know, I feel like it's time to give back to the community. I love serving in the community, and I want to serve in a bigger way and make a bigger impact.
Okay, I think that's fair. All right, so before, I've got a couple of other questions that I've written down, but I don't want to use up all of our time together with me asking questions. So who wants to start us off in the crowd? And just come on, stand up in your seat and be real loud. Come on, I know somebody's got, for all the emails I got from people who were yelling at me about doing this event, and nobody wants to ask a question, come on.
I like butter brickle ice cream. And I know what a woman is.
Yeah.
I'll ask a question. Andy Schaefer has encouraged the Democrats to come out to vote at this primary. What is your position?
Well, you know, I certainly don't approve of that.
Repeat the question.
Repeat the question, yeah, you mean to repeat it for her?
Yeah, you got mine.
Okay, so yes, what her question was, that one of my opponents, Andy Schaefer, has invited Democrats to come out and to vote in this upcoming election, and she wanted to know what my position on that was. So what I have to say is I do not approve or invite Democrats to vote in a Republican primary. I think they have every opportunity to provide themselves with a candidate or multiple candidates to do their own primary. I know that part of the reason was that you know, that they may or may not have a voice in the upcoming November election, and you know, that's simply not our responsibility. We want to make sure that we elect a person that represents our values as Republicans, somebody that will stand up for what we hold dear, and somebody that will to carry out the Republican creed. You know, we want to make sure that that's the type of person. And so if we have Democrats voting in our primary election, we won't get that person. And not to mention, it opens up an opportunity for the Democrats to weigh in on our election, make sure that they hurt the chances of the best candidate, one that they may have to face in November. So we want to keep a clean election. We want to elect the best candidate, the one that has the best opportunity to win, and the one that will uphold our values as conservatives. So I do not in any way approve of inviting Democrats to vote in our election.
With the three of you in this race, has everybody agreed to support whoever wins going forward? I'm assuming that the person does run again the next year? Or is there going to be I'll be back in your face in a few months?
Well, that I do not know.
Okay.
I am pretty sure that at least one of them will be back in the next
Andy.
career candidate.
And that's not something, is that something that you would ask of people, or?
You know, I haven't thought of it.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you answered most of the questions with your survey with the local people, which is important. And I asked you this at the Health and Women's Club meeting. But it's very important to me that we preserve the history of Hanover. Richmond is just decimated any kind of history that's, you know, than our legacy. And so I'm particularly interested in Scotchtown, Patrick Henry's home. And I think you feel strongly about history and preserving that. And is that something you would really try to safeguard, is the history of this Hanover County, because it is so stellar?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. You know, Hanover is extremely rich in heritage and history. And yes, I would definitely, you know, not allow, if it's all possible by me, anything to happen to those areas. We want to do everything we can to preserve our history. So that's how we learn, and that's important for our children to be able to visit that. And like I said, we, you know, like I said, I was talking earlier about being a professional dog trainer and getting to travel up down the East Coast. We had so many opportunities to visit sites like that, and so that was very important to our family, and we do cherish that as well.
Thank you.
I mean, it is weird. I don't know the history of this theater, but every time I walk into an old theater like this, I've gotten pretty good after 20 years in media of anticipating the kind of trash story that's coming when I do something. I don't know if this theater was ever segregated. I have no clue. I know in Richmond, that was one of the issues. I have some friends who are on the board of the Bird Theater, and they are obsessed with the fact that at one point the Bird Theater was segregated. And I mean, you could destroy the Bird Theater today if that's what you want to do over something that we can't change now. What's your attitude to somebody, since Hanover seems to be one of the ground zero places for these types of cultural battles, if they get up in your face about that kind of thing? You can't do anything about what happened in the past. You're in 2022, but how do you manage contemporary turmoil over those types of things?
You know, that's probably not a question I'd ask too often as a board of supervisors, but you know, we're not always proud of our history, but it is our history. It's how we learn. It's how we grow. And you know, we can't erase history. That's not what we should be doing. We should embrace our history. We should learn from our mistakes and move forward. So they need to be there as a reminder of how far we've come. And I think that's why it's important to keep history as it is, because it's just a fact. It's not a feeling. It's not you know how you feel about it. It is what it is, and it did happen. And I think that's how we learn. It's how we grow. It's how we don't make the same mistakes again. And so I think that preserving our history and acknowledging our shortcomings is very important as a society. We need to know that. We need to know where we came from, and we need to know. And that helps us know where we're going.
Yes. Well, I hope it won't come before the board, but these days it's a whole different set of issues. Yeah. And we're seeing the end result, aren't we, economically, yes, of taking our eye off the ball and focusing on the wrong issues. And then we all wind up hurt. White, black, old, young, gay, straight, whatever. We wind up kind of crashing. All right, who else has got questions? Yes, sir.
Sir, so what's your take on Youngkin's surplus of transportation and what he's planning on doing as far as exercising the gas tax, taking away some of that?
So you're talking about his attempt to remove the gas tax for some relief?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I
Which
personally,
is going to take from transportation.
it's going to take away from transportation.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not going to be fully up on board, up on all of that as I'd like to be. But I think I understand the basics behind it is that our state has a surplus, if I'm not mistaken,
Yes.
and so it's an opportunity to give us some relief during a time of struggling, and get things back in perspective, and maybe give back a little of that money to people that worked hard, and pay their taxes. And I guess a lot of that money probably came from the CARES Act as well. So we do have a surplus, and I'm in favor of giving back to the community while we have the opportunity.
Also, I got a second question for you. Our real estate taxes, property taxes have soared this year. I know everybody in here, I'm sure. And I don't know if your capability of doing something towards that is there as a board supervisor.
Right.
I think it's due to the inflated prices of new construction that's in Beaverdam going on now. And I think that has an effect on it. So I don't know, I think that's something you can do, have something to do with it, but it's definitely having an effect on their property taxes, and it's inflated. For people that don't want to leave Beaverdam,
Right.
inflated property taxes are a killer.
Right.
I'm not planning on selling tomorrow because I love Beaverdam.
Right.
So for us, it's hurtful.
Yeah.
So.
I can respond to that to the best of my ability. Hanover has one of the lowest tax rates in our region. Unfortunately, the cost of homes has skyrocketed, as you mentioned, and that's what the driving factor is to it. I don't know if there's much we can do about that. I mean, obviously, the houses are going to come down eventually, but what we do need to keep an eye on, and I think as a board of supervisor, is that when the values come down, then so do your assessments. So I don't think it's your tax rate that's going up, it's the assessment. I know that ours skyrocketed as well, and it like I say, it's painful. It's unfortunate that we're paying, 2 to 3 times what a house is worth. But when those prices come back down, I think we need to be diligent at the Board of Supervisors level is to make sure that your assessments come down as well. And so that would be what I think that I could personally do about it.
Thank you.
We're borderline on a libertarian convention with that question. Do you ever really own your house if you buy a house? Which I think is a legit question, especially as if you retire and you don't have additional income and those prices go up. That's a pretty fundamental American question. So that's interesting to hear that come up. All right, before I ask a last 1 or 2 questions, anybody else got anything?
Sure, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Just to tack on a question here about the assessments. You'll be Board of Supervisors if you win. You'll be on the supervisor. You get to appoint someone to the Planning Commission.
Mm-hmm.
The Planning Commission is always a ripe, juicy piece of fruit for whoever is going to get on the board, especially if they represent the developers more than they do the people. And it's very difficult in Hanover County to get, if you're just an ordinary citizen and not a developer, to deal with the regulatory morass in Hanover trying to get something done on your property. My property is in play right now, and we're finding out all about this head on. So my question to you is, what do you think you might be able to do in an appointment to that board, and what can you do to reduce regulation? We all just stood around here as Republicans, said Republican creed, but I never see Republicans reduce government. I've never seen it. So can you do that? What do you think?
Well, I think that I alluded to that earlier, because I went through that process and I've been through what you're talking about, and that's why I think we need an advocate in that area. And I also think that that whoever you appoint to that planning commission position, are you pining for that job, by the way? No. So anyway, I think whoever you appoint to that position, needs to be, aware of the struggles that we have. And, like I said, I'm really not quite sure at this point, because I'm not in that position yet, of what you can do about that. But that is a major concern for me. It is huge. I mean, like I told you earlier, that was one of 2 big reasons why I decided to put my hat in the ring, and that's been a couple of years ago. I remember talking to Mr. Stanley and telling him that, hey, I'm thinking about running for the Board of Supervisors, when you retire, because he had stated he was going to retire after 40 years. And the big part of that reason was, one is because you get an opportunity to appoint somebody to the school board, and then also you get to appoint somebody to the planning commission. And hopefully we can do something about those things, because it's like they're not out to help you. It's more like they're out to give you more roadblocks, and that's what I want to see change. And that's going to be a big part of my tenure if I'm elected.
Good?
Yep.
All right, how about other questions? We're down to our last 5 to 10 minutes at most.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Everybody else gets.
Where do you stand on the Second Amendment? The county's already had to go through the Board of Supervisors voting on making us a sanctuary county, just to keep some of our rights, and now they're coming after them again. So tell us where you stand on that.
I'm 100% in favor of the Second Amendment. I think I've had a little bit of education on that sanctuary city, sanctuary area for that, and I'm not sure if that is the proper approach or not. I've heard 2 sides of the story, and I'd have to learn a little bit more about becoming a sanctuary, for that, before I could weigh in on it. I wouldn't want to misrepresent myself in any way, but I am a gun owner. I'm a member of the Cavalier Gun Club, and I support a person's right to bear arms and to defend themselves. And we all, here as Republicans, know that defending yourself may be against tyranny. So I'm in support of gun ownership.
Can I follow up on that?
Sure.
If you listen to my show every day, one of the criticisms I've had, even close friends of mine, people who used to serve in the legislature with my dad, who I like very much personally. You know, I'm an adult now, and I gotta tell you, I've been disappointed that Republicans have not said, you know what, I wish that we lived in a society where we could be focused on decorum, but it's time to fight.
Yep.
And that issue, especially if it comes to Hanover, is gonna be a fight. And I wonder, you know, how do you, in anticipation potentially of being on the board, how do you navigate when it's time to pick a fight? Because Democrats, quite frankly, seem to be willing to manipulate the rules, do the sanctuary city for the illegal immigrants and the like, and they really aren't devoted and dedicated to the rule of law. And I go back and forth with, as a Republican, do I stick primarily to the rule of law, or do I say, you know what, we're in a fist fight now, it's an ugly fist fight, and I gotta make sure my side at the end of the fight is still standing.
Well, I personally think we're in a time where it's time to fight. You know, I think, like I say, it's a pivotal time in our history. The Democrats or the radical left, or, you know, whatever you want to label that, they're going all out. And so now is the time. If we're going to fight, we need to fight for every right that we have, every liberty that we have. You know, we can't be soft anymore on anything. There's no time for that. I do not believe that, and I think that's why at this place and time in our history, I think that if we will be obedient and that we will be good stewards with what God has blessed us with, a wonderful country with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You know, we need to defend those rights, and we need to do it fervently now. So I don't think it's time to show decorum when it comes to the Democrats. I think it's time to fight back, because it seems like, you know, the Republican Party has become more of a cruise ship when it needs to be a battleship.
If I steal that from you, I have to give you credit. Hold on, let me write that down.
Actually, I stole that one from my pastor, because he said the church has become a cruise ship and it needs to be a battle. So I'm going to give Pastor Gary Beaverdam Baptist kudos for that.
I think that's terrific. All right, last question, if you don't mind, and that's kind of a heavy question to end on. With what happened in Texas, and you alluded to that tragedy, there will be a push, and I think it's probably a legitimate push, for additional mental health resources. You all will have a different series of needs compared to the city of Richmond or Chesterfield County or Henrico County. But when you're looking at a budget, how are you going to make that list of priorities with new things like that? Probably as a big line item or an increasing line item in your budget.
Well, that's going to be a difficult one to answer from here, but, you know, as your priorities shift, I mean, you know, being physically responsible and you only have so much money to work with, you know, something will have to go in order to meet a greater need. And if mental health issues are rising in our schools and in our communities, then we'll have to step up to the occasion, because, like I said, we want to provide the best environment possible for our citizens and especially for our students struggling with these kind of disasters and things like that. So, you know, I mean, you can't. I wouldn't print money to take care of the need. We would just eliminate a need that's lower on the totem pole and rise to the occasion and be the kind of people we need to be.
Well, I've interviewed some people who would say, I would just tax you a little bit more. So I like that answer, at least from a starting point, better than tax you more. All right, is there anybody who's just desperate to get in one last question before we wrap up?
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. I'm from Beaverdam. And I hear you saying you're about managed growth. And I want to know what you think that means. What is your vision of managed growth? Because I heard you say that you changed ordinances had to be changed for your businesses. And I don't know if you're aware, but there's probably 12 houses going up in a 2-mile radius on Tyler Station Road in Beaverdam. Beaverdam Road, right in front of your church.
Mm-hmm.
It is all slotted now for houses. And down Tyler Station, there's 7 of them going up down there. I live on Hewlett Road, across the street from me. Somebody can't afford to build a house. They're putting a modular home on 6 acres of land. That's a lot of growth. And I am wondering how and what you're feeling about that. Do you feel like that's managed, or, and it's all at one time? And there, I'm sure there's more coming, because there's a lot more lots for sale.
Yeah, that's a hard one, because like I say, you do have a right to develop your property, in the way you see fit, as long as you abide by the ordinances. We have the 10-acre lot rule, and a lot of times that eliminates, multiple houses in a smaller area. So that is a big help there. And also, we need to take into consideration that these developments and these houses go up on areas where the roads are not designed to handle the traffic flow. And so I think we need to take into consideration those type of things. So even though someone has a right to develop a property the way they see fit, I mean, you have to take into consideration that, the roads won't handle it. So I think that's how you manage some of the development, is you look at the area that it's going in and to decide whether or not it's a good fit for the community. And sometimes they're not. And that's why we don't want to hand a rubber stamp to developers. We want to make sure that whoever we elect in office, is not beholding or doesn't have any ties to that, to where they say, yeah, that's fine, whatever you want to do. We need to take into consideration your thoughts on that and what it means to our rural environment. But also we want to respect the rights of landowners as well, as long as they abide by, the rules that we have set forth in advance.
Good answer, I think. That's a toughie. I mean, this is different. This is a Board of Supervisors question versus a House of Delegates question or a State Senate question. And this is why those meetings go on for 6 and 7 hours, and everybody's mad when you leave. So,
Yeah.
You ready for that?
One friend and 100 enemies out there.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's the toughie. All right. Well, when your host steps up to the podium, you usually get the high side. Did we do right? We were good?
I think you did a great job.
Okay.
And